The first thing my husband did after the accident wasn't hold my hand. He handed me divorce papers, right there, in the ICU. The room smelled like bleach and false hope. Machines hummed softly, counting seconds like they were coins. My leg was strapped in metal and foam, numb but screaming underneath. The doctor had said I'd walk again, with time. What he didn't say was that some people don't wait for recovery. My husband stood at the foot of my bed, crisp shirt, calm face, already finished with me. A thin envelope rested in his hand like it weighed nothing. "Sign it," he said. No hesitation, no softness. Behind him, his mother hovered near the door, clutching her purse, eyes darting anywhere but my face. Silence was her language. It always had been. "I want a perfect wife," my husband continued, leaning closer so I could smell his cologne, "not a burden in a wheelchair." A burden. The word didn't break me. It clarified something. He slid the papers onto the tray table. His signature was already there, crooked, rushed. The pen was tied to the clipboard like even it wasn't trusted to escape. "And the hospital bills?" I asked quietly. He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Those are yours." He waited, for tears, for begging, for collapse. I didn't give him any of it. I looked at the document the way I'd look at a contract, carefully. Calmly, because that's what it was. A legal moment disguised as cruelty. I remembered something then, something simple. A signature isn't just a name, it's proof of identity. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the IV needles bruising my skin. I signed anyway. Slowly. Clearly. My full legal name, exactly as it appears on official records. When I handed the pen back, he smiled. Victory, he thought. He didn't know that the moment my name touched that paper, his life quietly began to unravel. And I hadn't even left the bed yet. What he didn't realize was that hospitals record everything: time, witnesses, signatures. And I had just given myself evidence. I woke up the next morning to the same beeping machine and a strange pressure in my chest. Not pain. Shame. Shame for every moment I had made myself smaller so my marriage could feel bigger. The nurse came in early, pulled the blinds halfway open, and sunlight spilled across the white walls like nothing terrible had happened. She checked my IV, scribbled something on her chart, and asked the question everyone asks when they don't want the real answer. "How are you feeling today?" "I'm fine," I said. It was a lie, but a useful one. After she left, I stared at the ceiling and replayed his voice. Perfect wife. Burden, the ICU isn't just a room. It's a courtroom without a judge where every sentence feels final. And he had spoken like someone delivering a verdict. My phone buzzed on the tray beside me. Unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Miller," a woman said, professional and distant. "I'm calling from hospital administration. We need to discuss your health insurance coverage." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Go on." "There appears to have been a recent modification to your policy. Some procedures now require additional authorization." "Recent? How recent?" I asked. "Approximately 2 weeks ago, the request was made by the policyholder." I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it out loud. "Who is the policyholder?" There was a brief pause. "Mr. Ethan Miller, my husband." The call ended politely. Too politely for something that felt like a quiet shove off a cliff. I sat there in silence, the room suddenly too large. He hadn't just left me. He had prepared for my fall. While I was still walking, still trusting, still believing we were a team, he had gone behind my back and loosened the net beneath me. That's when I understood it wasn't panic that drove him. It was planning. A knock came at the door. My neighbor Carol stepped in, holding a grocery bag and the kind of expression only women who have survived disappointment recognize. "I heard," she said softly. I didn't ask how. She sat beside me and took my hand. "Men like that don't leave empty-handed," she added. "They leave traps." My phone buzzed again, a text from my husband. "We need to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my banking app and saw something that made my blood run cold. Scheduled transfers, multiple, small amounts, to an account I didn't recognize. And suddenly, the divorce papers weren't the worst thing he'd handed me. They were just the beginning. He thought I was too weak to notice. What he didn't know was that numbers don't lie, and I had just found his trail. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, watching the numbers sit there like they weren't about to change my life. 3 transfers, all small, all scheduled, all quiet. The kind of amounts no one panics over unless they know what they're looking at. My husband had always underestimated one thing about me. I read details. I didn't confront him. I didn't reply to his message. Men like him expect noise, panic, accusations they can twist into hysteria. Instead, I pressed the call button. When the nurse came in, I asked for my phone charger and a moment alone. She nodded, already exhausted by other people's emergencies. I waited until the door closed, then scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in months. Jessica. My lawyer answered on the second ring. Sophia, she said slowly. I was wondering when you'd call. He brought me divorce papers in the ICU, I said. I signed them. There was a brief silence on the line, then her voice sharpened. How did you sign? With my full legal name, I replied. Clear. No initials. Another pause, then softer but satisfied. Good. I told her everything, the insurance, the transfers, the timing. He didn't panic, I finished. He planned. Jessica exhaled. That makes this easier. How? I asked. Because intent leaves fingerprints, she said, and he's left them everywhere. She explained it simply, no legal fog. The hospital logs, the policy changes, the financial movements. Together they told a story. Not of a frightened husband, but of a man preparing to cut loose while grabbing what he could. And the money? I asked. Don't touch it, she said immediately. Let it sit. Trails are more valuable than refunds. I smiled faintly. After the call, I opened my banking settings and saw something I had forgotten I'd ever done. A power authorization, set months ago, notarized, boring paperwork for emergencies. Emergencies like this. I sent one message to my bank manager. Please place a temporary hold on all outgoing transfers, effective immediately. The reply came minutes later. Done. Pending your confirmation. I set the phone down and looked at my injured leg. Still trapped, still useless. But for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel helpless. Outside this room, my husband thought I was bleeding quietly. He didn't know I had just shut the valve. What he didn't realize was that stopping the money would force him to do something dangerous. Come talk to me himself. The physical therapist arrived just after noon. She was calm, efficient, and didn't look at me with pity, which I appreciated more than sympathy. She adjusted the support belt around my waist, placed the crutch where it belonged, and spoke like someone who believed my body before I did. Today we stand, she said. I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it felt impossible. When I pushed up from the bed, pain shot through my leg like a warning flare. My hands trembled. The room tilted. For a second, I thought I would fall, and something inside me whispered that my husband had been right. Burden. Then I gripped the bar harder. I'm not done, I said, mostly to myself. The therapist steadied me. One breath at a time. I stood there, shaking, drenched in sweat, every muscle screaming in protest. But I stayed upright. 30 seconds felt like an hour. When she finally helped me sit back down, I didn't feel victory. I felt direction. Later that afternoon, Carol came by with coffee and that look people get when they're trying not to say I told you so. She didn't ask how I was. She already knew. You stood, she said. Yes, I replied. And I'm going to walk. She nodded once. Good, because men like him only understand movement when it's away from them. My phone buzzed. Another message from my husband. Why are the transfers frozen? I stared at the screen, read it twice. Then once more for enjoyment. I didn't answer. Instead, I typed a single message and erased it. Typed again, erased again. Silence was cleaner. That evening, I reviewed every document I had access to, contracts, policies, old emails. Not with anger, but with clarity. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for leverage. By nightfall, my body was exhausted, but my mind was steady. Then my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Again and again. On the fourth call, I answered. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight, controlled but strained. Yes, I replied calmly. We do. We agreed on a time, a public place, neutral ground. After I hung up, I exhaled slowly. For the first time since the accident, I wasn't waiting for something to happen to me. I was walking toward it. He thought the meeting would give him control back. He didn't realize I was bringing a notebook, not to argue, but to record. The cafe smelled like roasted coffee and quiet judgment. It was the kind of place where people spoke softly, not out of kindness, but because reputation had ears. Small tables, polished floors, a space where no one made scenes, and my husband loved places like that. He was already there when I arrived. Perfect shirt, expensive watch, that familiar confidence he wore like armor. When he saw the wheelchair, his expression flickered for half a second before settling into practiced concern. "You shouldn't be out," he said. "You need rest." "I am resting," I replied. "Just not hiding." He ordered espresso. I asked for water. He smirked. "Still controlling everything, huh?" I smiled politely and said nothing. Silence unsettles men who expect drama. "I want to finish this cleanly," he began, leaning back. "No lawyers, no complications. You signed, we both move on." "Of course," I said calmly. He relaxed. That was his mistake. "The company," he continued casually, "will need to discuss that." I tilted my head. "Discuss what exactly?" "My share," he said. "I supported you. I was there." I let him talk. Men like him always confuse presence with ownership. "I was young," he added, lowering his voice. "I need a life. You're not going to be the same." There it was, the justification. I looked at him and asked gently, "Did you change my health insurance?" His eyes blinked too fast. "What?" "The coverage, the authorization, the contact details," I said evenly. "All changed 2 weeks ago." "That's a system issue," he replied quickly. "And the transfers?" I asked. "From the business account," his jaw tightened. "Are you accusing me of stealing?" "I'm asking questions," I said. "You're answering emotionally." He leaned forward. "Do you really think you're strong enough to fight me like this?" I laughed softly, not kindly. "You don't understand," I said, leaning closer. "I signed in the ICU with my full legal name, very clearly." His face drained of color. I stood, or rather prepared to leave with help from the waiter. As I passed him, I said quietly, "You should stop calling me weak." Because by now I was done listening. What he didn't know was that I wasn't finished with him yet. The next step would involve the one person whose approval he couldn't afford to lose. I didn't go home after the cafe. I went somewhere far more uncomfortable for him. His mother's house. She lived in a quiet neighborhood where appearances mattered more than truth. Perfect hedges, perfect curtains, perfect lies. When she opened the door and saw me in the wheelchair, her face stiffened, not with concern, but fear. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I won't take long," I replied. She let us in. The living room smelled of lavender and control. She sat across from me, hands folded, waiting for emotion she could dismiss. I didn't give her any. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to show you paperwork." That word made her uncomfortable. I laid out 3 documents. No drama, no accusations. First, hospital records, visitor logs, time stamps. "He brought divorce papers to the ICU," I said calmly, "and told me I was a burden." She shook her head automatically. "He wouldn't." "Second," I continued, sliding the next paper forward, "he altered my health insurance while we were still married." She read. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Third," I said, placing the final page down, "he tried to move money from my company while I was hospitalized." Numbers have no mercy. She stood up abruptly and walked to the window, as if distance could protect her from facts. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "I want you to stop pretending this is normal," I said. "And I want him to stop." She turned back slowly. Her pride was cracking, but pride dies hard. That night she called a family dinner, a table full of witnesses. When he spoke, he didn't deny it. He justified it. And when his mother finally raised her voice, sharp, trembling, furious, something in him collapsed. He hadn't expected that. Neither had I. That dinner would cost him more than money. It would cost him the only shield he had left, his family name. The dinner table was too large for the lie he brought with him. Roasted chicken cooled untouched. Glasses clinked nervously. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one wanted to be the first to acknowledge it. That's how families like theirs worked. Politeness first, truth later. My husband sat across from me, relaxed in a way that was almost insulting. He thought this was a formality, a mother calming a misunderstanding, a wife being dramatic. Helen cleared her throat. "We're here to talk," she said, her voice controlled but sharp. "About what you did," he smiled. "Mom, she already signed. There's nothing to—" "You called her a burden," Helen interrupted. The room froze. He shrugged. "I told the truth. I didn't want my life tied to a hospital bed." No apology, no regret. Something shifted then, not in me but around me. A cousin looked down. An uncle stopped chewing. Respect was quietly leaving the room. "And the insurance," Helen pressed. "That was practical," he said. "I needed protection." "And the money?" she asked, holding up the documents. "From her company," he snapped. "I deserved that. I was her husband." That was when Helen stood. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You have humiliated this family," she said. "Not because you left, but because you planned it like theft." He stared at her, stunned. "You will return every cent," she continued. "You will sign what is fair, and you will never use our name to justify your behavior again." He looked around the table for allies. There were none. For the first time, he understood something crucial. Reputation, once lost, doesn't scream. It simply leaves. I rolled my chair back quietly. As I passed him, I said softly, "You wanted a perfect wife." I paused. "Now you get to live with the man you showed everyone you are." 2 days later, my lawyer called. He had agreed to sign everything, not out of remorse, but fear. We met at the notary's office, the same kind of room where lives quietly change forever. Neutral walls, neutral tone, no emotions allowed. He arrived late. No confidence this time, no jokes, just tension pulling his shoulders forward like gravity. The papers were already waiting. My lawyer slid them across the table. "These are the final terms." He skimmed quickly, jaw tightening. No claim to the company, no access to accounts, full repayment of attempted transfers, shared responsibility for medical expenses. "This ruins me," he muttered. "No," I said calmly. "This corrects you." The notary asked for identification, checked signatures, compared names. When the stamp came down, it made a sharp sound. Final. He signed without looking at me. When it was over, he stood abruptly. "I never thought you'd do this." I met his eyes for the first time that day. "I never thought you'd abandon me in the ICU." Silence. He left without another word. Outside, the sun felt different, not brighter, cleaner. "You won," my lawyer said quietly. I shook my head. "I came back." That night, alone in my living room, legs still aching, I drank coffee slowly and listened to the quiet. Not the lonely kind, the peaceful kind. My phone buzzed. A message from him. "I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I deleted it. Rehook end of part 8. The next morning, I took my first steps without assistance and realized freedom doesn't arrive loudly. Recovery wasn't cinematic. It was slow showers, careful steps. Pain that reminded me healing isn't gentle, but every movement belonged to me, not to a marriage, not to compromise. The day the divorce finalized, I walked into the notary's office using only a cane. The clerk barely noticed. That was the beauty of it. My victory didn't need witnesses. The stamp came down. Finished. Later that evening, Helen called. Her voice was different now. Older, smaller. "I was wrong," she said. "I defended him because I didn't want to see who he became." "I know," I replied calmly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I accept," I said, "but I'm not coming back." She understood. Weeks passed. My life filled with ordinary things, work calls, therapy sessions, groceries, quiet mornings. And with every normal moment, I felt something return. Respect. He stopped calling. Men like him don't heal. They replace. And I was no longer replaceable. One evening, I sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the city move without me needing to keep up. I wasn't bitter. I was free. Because the perfect woman isn't the one who endures everything. She's the one who knows when to leave quietly and never reopen the door. If this story moved you, remember this: disrespect rarely starts loud. It starts convenient. And courage doesn't scream. It signs, stands, and walks away.